Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello everybody, how you doing today? We're here today to talk a little bit about, well, some select clips that I pulled from MAM2. The first one I'm going to play is a clip of Dean and a little bit of Jerry, but mostly Dean Strang, and something that he says that I think is huge. I think it's important, and I think it sets the tone really for this video. So I'm going to go ahead and play that clip of Dean Strang here real quick, and then I'll come on back.
Dean Strang actually made an appearance at the Minnesota State Capitol today. Later tonight, he's going to be speaking to a sold-out audience in Minneapolis.
The value to me of the documentary or of any book about the case ought to be asking bigger questions.
If the things that seem to outrage people and the questions that we've gotten are things that Dean and I have talked about for years, but most people haven't been interested in hearing about them until now.
When we don't have confidence in the workings of the system, I think we have an obligation to try to work towards a system that makes fewer mistakes.
Yeah. How do you do that?
You talk about it.
You talk about it, right? Which is something I've been saying here, obviously, on my channel. Is it's all about awareness. Awareness it means people talking about it. Right? It's about, that's what it's really about, asking the bigger questions, like Dean said. It's easy to focus in on Stephen and Brendan, but there are more Stephen and Brendans in the world, and meaningful criminal justice reform is really the bigger goal here. But obviously we're all concerned about Stephen and Brendan, and maybe even a few other cases that we've kind of learned about and taken an interest in since we learned about Stephen and Brendan and stuff like that. So you talk about it, right? You talk about it, and that's what I do here on my channel quite a bit. I talk about many things that are problematic, that are just not right. It's just things that just stand out as being not on the up and up, or not transparent, not seeming to be fair. Really, that's what a lot is going on with this case and stuff. So we'll start out with things like Michael Halbach referring to the mourning process long before they before they found any evidence of Teresa being deceased, and he had said that in an interview. Strange, not damning, not anything particular, but it's just another odd event. Then we move on to the strangeness of the blood found in the RAV4, Stephen's blood found in the RAV4. I mean, it's just odd. There's so little of it. He was supposed to be actively bleeding, yet it's not anywhere near the ignition or gear shift or any of the normal places you would expect to see it. There's no prints. Then there's suddenly 1.9 nanograms of Stephen's DNA on the hood latch somehow, which is just like astronomical. And it's an astronomical amount in terms of touch DNA. You don't generally leave 1.9 nanograms from touch DNA. It's just not common. It's not at all common. It's just bizarre. And I mean, that's just with the blood and the evidence of the RAV4 there. Moving on from that, then you move to the burn pit where they find about 40% of her bones, only a couple teeth. They find not all of the rivets for these Dassey Fuentes jeans, right, that they say she was wearing. They didn't find all of the rivets for that. They didn't find the waist button for those jeans. Where are these things? If this is the original burn site that you're sifting, where are all of these things? Because it's the original. According to you, the state of Wisconsin, Manitowoc, Calumet, whatever, according to the prosecution, this was the original burn site. So where are those items? They should be there if it's the original burn site, especially if you sifted it the way you did. They should all be there. That's what would be in an original burn site. The fact that things are missing is what suggests that they moved. And that's just, the way that is. Then we can talk about the fact that we look through that trailer, we look through that garage, and there is not a single trace of Teresa at all. There's not, just not. There's not. Except for what? The bullet. The magic bullet. The bullet that was supposedly used to kill Teresa. Okay? So therefore, it would have had to have been in the garage when they jackhammered that crack. If it was used in the murder of Teresa, that means it would have been there before they jackhammered that crack. But when you look at the picture of that bullet that they discovered, that bullet is shiny, not dusty in any way, and sitting on top of the concrete dust that was created when the crack in the floor was jackhammered. So the magic bullet is a complete bogus piece of evidence. Gone. Bye. It's bogus. It's absolutely bogus. Because, like I said, it should have been there it should have been there all that time when that crack was getting jackhammered and stuff. It should not be sitting on top of the dust. It should not be shiny. Just shouldn't be. Then, you just got, on and on it goes, really. It's just, the next main point you would probably get to is Brendan. In light of all this shaky evidence that I was really just pointing out here, that the prosecution would have you believe is rock solid. On top of all that shady evidence, you can tell that the state thought it was shaky evidence. Because in order to make it all kind of come together a little better, they go and they grab a 16-year-old kid who clearly has learning difficulties, and they coerce him, feed him a story and coerce him and get him to say the things they want him to say, and then hold a press conference that essentially removes any possibility that either Stephen or Brendan had at a fair trial. Okay? All because they felt like getting that confession from Brendan would help get the lead pipe cinch, as I like to refer to it, against Avery, because they were worried about this very, very sketchy evidence. As I've been pointing it out, they knew it was sketchy too. They were looking to reinforce themselves. That's what happened here, and that's why Brendan got dragged into all this. It's, to me, it's a sad situation, certainly. But then you look at what with Brendan, another one of the sad things, and another reason that we need to talk about it and keep talking about it, is what prevented Brendan from being successful in his habeas, filing, and his run at habeas relief. What stood in the way? Ultimately, it was AEDPA. And you guys have heard me talking about AEDPA recently. You guys know how I feel about AEDPA. And basically, AEDPA has allowed Wisconsin and Manitowoc and Calumet to keep a lid on this thing for just a little bit longer, because they were able to ultimately prevent Brendan. Once Brendan would have gotten out, and once that would have happened, there would have started being a lot more questions about everything that happened in the Halbach investigation. It would have been, basically it's them kind of trying to put the genie back in the bottle. And that's why they fought so hard to fight Brendan's habeas proceedings. And like I said, Brad Schimmel was doing little more than a Hail Mary when he petitioned the on-bank review, because Brendan had already won twice. It's just sad, really. And in the end, 8 federal judges weighed in on Brendan's case, and they were split 4-4. It just so happens that when it came to the on-bank review, four of the judges that believed that AEDPA should matter in this case, 4 of those judges happened to be on the on-bank review. Judge Duffin, who originally granted Brendan his habeas relief, wasn't part of the on-bank review, but he originally is a federal judge who ruled in favor of Brendan. So when you count up the federal judges in this that heard Brendan's case, they were split. Hardly a resounding decision. Okay, that's all I can say about that. So we're gonna go ahead and look a little bit of from MEM2, a little of the explanation into AEDPA with some very interesting clips, particularly the clips of the senators, folks. Those ones are particularly interesting. So I'll go ahead and we'll take a look at those and we'll come on back.
The statute is known as AEDPA, AEDPA, which is the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act. The anti-terrorism part of the statute is in direct response to the Oklahoma City bombing and the belief on the part of politicians that Timothy McVeigh should be given the death penalty and that federal courts should not delay his execution.
There has been a massive explosion at a federal building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It happened just a short time ago. A large portion of that building has collapsed and fallen.
There are reports that at least 250 people are missing.
There were 40 children inside because of the daycare center on the 2nd floor.
This is the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil ever.
The bombing in Oklahoma City was an act of cowardice, and it was evil. Let there be no room for doubt. We will find the people who did this. When we do, justice will be swift, certain, and severe.
There's apparently a confusion over whether you're for or against an amendment regarding habeas corpus.
Well, yeah, we've been trying to pass, and I tried to pass last year and failed to do it, a bill which would reform the habeas corpus procedure, or the criminal appeals procedure.
So?
In death penalty cases, it normally takes 8 years to exhaust the appeals. It's ridiculous. And if you have multiple convictions, it could take even longer. We need to cut the time delay on the appeals dramatically.
The families of the victims of those people who have lost loved ones, colleagues, and friends to acts of terrorism came to us and says, give us justice. Give us habeas and death penalty reform.
Why is it necessary to link the death penalty and the constitutional guarantees of habeas corpus to a terrorism bill? This is just a political deal.
The absurdity, the obscenity of 17 years from the time a person has been sentenced till that sentence is carried out through endless appeals up and down the state court system, up and down the federal court system, makes a mockery of the law.
Only 100 out of 10,000 habeas corpus issues come from death penalty cases. Even less come from terrorist cases. Yet this bill is not limited either to death penalty cases or to terrorist cases. It is depriving every single American, every single child, every single one of us of our constitutional protections of habeas corpus.
This statute placed strict timelines on people seeking review of their sentences and applied more broadly to cases that didn't involve death sentences.
America will never surrender to terror.
President Clinton said his intention was not to constrain federal courts in their ability to review constitutional violations. But the Supreme Court, in its interpretation of the language of the statute, has imposed greater and greater restrictions on judges' ability to review state court decisions.
Because of AEDPA, we have to show the federal court that when we told the state courts that the Constitution was violated, and they disagreed with us, that the state court was not just wrong. The state court didn't just make a mistake. It made an unreasonable mistake.
You have to thread the eye of a needle in order to get relief in federal court. 99% or even more of federal habeas petitions are denied. Winning in federal court is the equivalent of a legal miracle.
To this day, of course, Dassey's saying he didn't do it. And perhaps he'll win his federal habeas appeal, but I wouldn't count on it. I mean, if I was looking at Brenda's situation, I would say that for all practical purposes, his case is over. So I don't think there was any loyalty to attempting to persuade him that he wasn't going to succeed at trial, and the best thing for him to do was probably to try to strike a deal with the state.
So, we talk about it, right? Well, let's talk about that. Now, obviously, what happened in Oklahoma City in 1995, April 1995, was an absolutely tragic event. Absolutely. Should Timothy McVeigh, should he have to, suffer the punishment for that? Absolutely, 100%. That was never in question. I don't think Timothy McVeigh was ever in any. I don't think there was ever any danger that guy would have been released or anything like that. He would have eventually, met his maker, no matter what, and it wasn't going to be as a free man. Okay, so I just want to point that out because that was never going to happen. That he was going to get off or whatever. But what happened is this piece of legislation, AEDPA, was introduced under the guise of we want to put people like Timothy McVeigh away quick and not and prevent them from abusing the court system, using. I mean, first off, I get it why they're so mad at Timothy McVeigh, but listen to the language that they're abusing the court system by exercising their habeas rights. These people, those guys in Congress that were arguing for AEDPA, they clearly just have no care for what the habeas writ is and what it means for this country and what it's supposed to mean. And then you get into the stats that were being offered, right? That one senator was saying, only 100 out of every 10,000 court cases is a death penalty case. Only 110,000. Okay? And even less than 100 in 10,000 are terrorist cases. So you're talking about a very, very small percentage of court cases because they wanted to be able to kill those people faster. Because they were impatient to kill those people, folks. This is, I'm trying to put it in these terms so that people can understand this, just how clear this is. Because they wanted to kill a tiny, tiny percentage of the people going through the court system quicker, they robbed all of us of our habeas rights. Those, Look, you know, it should never have happened. It would be one thing if they made all this stuff apply only to terrorism cases or death penalty cases, but they didn't. They made it apply across the board, and they removed the habeas writ. One of the great things about our country that makes our country great, and they removed it. It's not cool. We need to be mindful and watch out for things like this in the future, because obviously more people with power, money, and ability to push things like this through are going to try to push things like this through in the future too. We have to be ever vigilant, and we have to start standing in the way of BS legislation like this one, AEDPA, that just did nothing essentially except rob us of our own habeas rights. I really don't see how we gain very much by being able to kill terrorists and people who are given the death penalty quicker. I don't see what we gain by that. Really, not much. I don't see how we gain much of anything, and I don't feel any safer from terrorists because of this act. Yeah, so that's the honest truth of it. So, as you know, just wanted to do this video today and point out, you know, like Dean said, you talk about it, and so, you know, I kind of wanted to go over some of the main, you know, some of the just, you know, rough main points in the case, really. For Stephen and for Brendan, and talk about AEDPA and like I said, folks, you know, how do we hopefully affect meaningful change in our criminal justice system? It's just like Dean said, we talk about it. So I'm gonna play the clip of Dean one more time on the way out here. If you guys haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Dean Strang actually made an appearance at the Minnesota State Capitol today. Later tonight, he's going to be speaking to a sold-out audience in Minneapolis.
The value to me of the documentary or of any book about the case ought to be asking bigger questions.
The things that seem to outrage people and the questions that we've gotten are things that Dean and I have talked about for years, but most people haven't been interested in hearing about them until now.
When we don't have confidence in the workings of the system, I think we have an obligation to try to work towards a system that makes fewer mistakes.
Yeah. How do you do that?
You talk about it.
So one of these things that hit me is when this documentary came out, I kind of watched it, and it's kept moving. You know, it's a great film.
Have any of you guys seen the movie? Making a Murderer?
Making a Murderer.
It's a series on Netflix.
Yeah, and so I got bit by it, and I went into the trial transcripts, and there's a whole community out there, and yeah, the guy's still in prison actually. And it's actually some stuff happening in the case, which is exciting, but it's just a regular guy that corrupt officials thought no one would care about. But what happened was there's two young filmmakers that decided to film it all for 10 years, and they made this documentary. It's a really great watch. So, and the last name of the individual is Avery, and so I wrote this song kind of saying, you know, it could happen to any of us, and that whole injustice anywhere is a threat to justice, justice everywhere. So this one's called Avery Road. Feel free to drum too. It takes place in Wisconsin, this whole saga. Wisconsin can be so cold. The scales of justice can erode. We accept lies big and bold. All we forget, we live on Avery Road. Could be you, could be me. Shouldn't sit by idly, accepting everything, all that we are told.